Hello, we're going to grow a head. Okay, so that's going to start with a neck base of 3 divisions. But before we do that, it's a good idea to, once you've got a particular distance and you know your mesh is okay, and that knowledge comes from orbiting round and checking, seeing where there are any anomalies, just watching out for where the shader makes the underside look dark and a bit wrong, but it's just a shading effect. So roll all the way around, just have a good old look, and make sure there aren't any kind of permanently black faces looking outwards, because that means you've got the polygons inside out somehow, which always means a bad mesh. So assuming it looks good, you can't be 100% that it is good. You can check in wireframe, just sort of roll around similarly, but even then there could be a 0 depth extrusion somewhere in the list. Now the ideal is to get rid of any of those, if there are any extrusions with no depth, no is it translation, no thickness, that's it, no thickness, and no offset. That's an extrusion you probably don't want or need. So you can go down and look at extrudes and just check in your channel box. That's that one there. Show hide the channel box. Go down and check what's there and see that there was no offset, but there was a thickness. And if I go down to that one, it's got a thickness as well, so that should be visible. But especially if it's got no thickness and no offset, it's going to cause trouble. And your best bet is really to see if you can delete it. So that's edit, delete node, or to do again if you can't delete. It does get faster though once you've got into a bit of a swing. And if you're just using Q for select object, W for move, and E for rotate, and R for scale, then that's a kind of good use of your hotkey knowledge already. You can get quite a lot done. Offset there. So all the ones I'm checking seem to have a purpose. There's quite a few clustered together there. So however small, there is an offset and there is a reasonable thickness as well. So it's a bit tiresome, but if you see something that looks a bit off in this, then you've kind of trapped it at a good point. If you've been using a sort of 1 centimeter cube, by the way, the numbers you get here might be so infinitesimally small as to appear kind of useless. But if the cube for the torso is only still 1 centimeters cubed, then there's been some very fiddly numbers here to have to deal with. And I'm talking about if it's purely 0 thickness, purely 0 offset, purely 0 translation, then it's an extrusion that you don't need, shouldn't be there, and it'll cause problems. So get rid of them. I've just checked through mine. I had intended to go through all those, but they all seem good. I think my mesh is better. You'll get better at this with practice, so it's no bad thing at this point to go right back to the beginning, start with a cube, add the subdivisions, and get it to have this structure. Get it back to having arms and legs, at which point it won't fit your profile. It won't be bearing much relationship to your reference image, but it will be kind of done. sort of base structure there. Everything else is kind of tweaks and you know, custom builtness. Okay, so I want to delete the history, so go Edit, Delete History, and this should tidy up. Just thinking about it, it should tidy up the input section. Maybe I shouldn't be on the last one. Maybe I should be on the most recent one. Sorry, I shouldn't be on the first one. I should be on the most recent. Edit, delete history. I think it deletes then past where you are in the list. It's going to be playing silly devils now. Okay, so if I select above, then back to inputs. Or go to object mode and click off. Click on again. All still there. Okay, edit, delete history, go. There we go. Bit fiddly, but there we are. So we go to back to polygon mode, face mode. Both terms seem to be used, which is not helpful. And not helpful that I'm dealing with the face of the character. So polygon or face is the same thing, and head or face may well be the same thing in this case. Extrude, drag up, and do 3 divisions. I'm still in polygon mode. I'm going to hit the Q just to stop this extrusion from me tempting me into adding more to it when it's fine as it is. And then Q again. For some reason I must have hit W by mistake. Select one, hold shift down, double click that one. One too many, I think. Shift down, double click. Hold shift down, quick double click. There we go. That's a bit of a faff. Next time going closer, maybe just checking. Okay, and now delete. So now we've got an actual physical gap. Okay, so I'm going to drag select, or not marquee select, undo that. I'm going to drag select. Drag select, apart from being a slightly different action, it doesn't pick up things that are sort of back facing. It doesn't kind of see through, so it's really good for just selecting what you can see. Extrude, and this time I'm going to the top of the reference image, just there, and I want 2 divisions. Okay, now for the rest of this I'm going to keep this area detached, or rather separated. There's a gap in between, so none of the mesh connects up at the minute. There's air going through. Okay, so if you're doing a project where you want to actually have the head as a separate object, you could merely delete this bit and start a new cube and get rid of the neck, you know, the kind of the neck facing faces of that. Or you could select all these polys here, do edit mesh, detach, and then go to mesh, separate, and that will give you a new object here, which will actually be some sort of grouping thing, which will have separate objects for the head and the body as part of its ownership, so child objects. And then to make the objects properly independent from one another, which is probably what you want in the long term, you'll need to delete history for each of the separate objects, and then drag each of them out of the group and just put them somewhere else in the list of objects here. And once the group is empty, so you've got your two new objects, the body object and the head object, out of that group by dragging and dropping, then you can delete the empty group thing. So it's delete history for each of the new objects, move them out of the group they're in, and then you can delete the empty group. But I'm keeping these together like this. Okay, I'm going to do the first in many bits of kind of fuss and faff. So there's an extrude just gone on there that I'm happy with. So Q on the thing, and I'm going to go to edge mode, and just going to start double clicking some runs of edges, which is just two really, and moving them around to make it slightly more head-like. First thing is double click this and go to move, and if you've got a cartoony character, its eyes are probably slightly higher up its head than this. I'm going to push this towards being more of a, I don't know, closer to a naturalistic sort of human character than a cartoony one. Nonetheless, it's still going to be a fair amount cartoony. And polygon mode, face mode for this. Okay, back to edge mode. So just to do a bit of basic reshaping, not a bad idea at this point. If you've got sort of a very shapely torso on your character, you might want to do some edge selecting like that, and then just push in. You can see there though that it's started to lose a bit of its shapeliness and has gone a bit, I don't know. Mine's going to be a more stocky sort of torso, I think. I'm just going to undo that. And ignore the major aspects, like in my side image you can see we've got quite a gut, a paunch, and I'm not going to spend any time looking at that yet. Okay, so the head is got the basic structure, but it needs a bit more so it can get the key facial features in. So I'm going to go for the multi-cut now, and I'm going to multi-cut with Control held down to constrain it so that it produces a continuous loop. You can see there that it doesn't go down past the neck, so I'm not adding any more to the body in doing this. I'm going to make it fairly close to the center line. So this is going to form really the thing that separates off the nose column from the eyes that'll be filling around here. Then I need some edges to be the kind of limiters for the orbit on the eye. So we'll have a run going there and a run going around there. And okay, so now I'm going to do a big loop that is going to form the basis of the eyes, a big inset that forms the basis of the eyes. Okay, so I'm going to go for Q, so I'm just selecting, not accidentally grabbing anything else, and so the eye just takes place here. I'm still in edge mode. Plumb. So just drag these two, go for extrude, and I'm going to send it back a little bit, but not much, and then offset is the key one. And we're going to go right in for an eye shape. And I notice I tend to start with the eyes a little bit too far apart, so I'm going to go for W, which is move, and just bring them slightly closer in. And at some point it's a good idea to just get a side view and see how deep set the eyes are. Not too bad actually. Just losing my nerve a little bit there and bringing them forwards again. Okay, now the eyes are going to be modelled around a sphere sort of eyeball, which means that's going to be a separate object, so I'm going to use my kind of skill and judgment to work out how the eyes are, I suppose, oriented. Eyelids, you might think, well, you just make a kind of sphere for an eyelid and cut a segment out and then that'll do. And that probably would do in a lot of really cartoony context or circumstances, but it doesn't allow kind of easy absorption into the hand-controlled mesh formation, the topology that I'm building in here. So I want the eyes to be, the aperture for the eyes to be facing forwards, because after all, the eyeball kind of pointing outwards and the surrounding eyelids, there's roughly the same amount of white of the eye to be seen either side of the eyelid, which kind of indicates that the aperture for the eye is more or less on a plane that faces forwards. So to get that effect or that aspect sorted out, we're looking at making the eyes aligned with the plane on the Z axis, going sort of through the screen. I've just lost my, or realise I can't see my view cube, so as you might have to do multiple times for some reason, get the view cube. I don't know if there's some sort of setting here. Preferences, help, viewport navigation, viewport, fit to view and view stage, on screen, show the view cube. So that is the thing, but for some reason it kind of disobeys it. Anyway, so back to this. So this pair of polys, pair of faces here, is what makes up the central profile for the eyes, where they meet the eyelid, or where the eyelid meets the eyeball, I should say. So I'm going to need to orient this correctly first, so get it oriented forwards. So if I hold Control down, left Control in this case, and click to vertex, I've converted the selection from being the faces to being the verts that make up the shape of those faces. And because I'm in the move tool, I can read off here a value along the Z axis, which I'm just going to check upon, which is the blue one. The Z axis is that value, which I'm doing Control and C. So I've copied it, and now if I paste it in the Z of this select field here, show hide the select field, read it in HD, or watch the video in HD, then you should be able to see these things. And then when I hit return, you can see the eyes are now facing straight forwards. Okay. So they're in a bit of a line. Okay, so that's how you can get things aligned to the X, Y, or Z planes. Okay, before I do any more work with the eyes, I need to get the mouth going, and from that I can create the nose area. So go to face mode, click and drag those into selection, and then extrude no thickness and offset it inwards. It looks quite like it's going to be the mouth area. It's not. It's going to be one of the kind of shaping areas for the mouth. Okay, I'm going to transfer from that then. Hit the Q key. So I'm just selecting now. And then select those faces and do a really scarcely there extrude for the nose. Okay, now as you can see it's kind of not quite right. I can probably fix that by going straight to rotate and doing that sort of thing, and then maybe move and poking it back, something like that. Okay, but it'll do for now. So something like that. No, obviously you'll get yours maybe how you see the nose developing. If there's a button nose, then you may not have, you may not need this sort of selected thing here, because the button nose is going to be more like there, and you just want to kind of build it out with 2 polys from one side, or 4 over both sides as it were, and extrude out that way, but it doesn't really matter. Okay, so that's built the nose in. That's given us this area here that can then become much more the mouth. I'm going to yeah, give us a bit more multi-cut work to do by adding in here. So this is going to be to go down the middle of the eyeball and just give us a bit more edge loopage to play with. And then if I go to Q again, so I'm just choosing and extrude, and this one's going to be kind of a small, oops, so if I just make setting there and then undo and undo, I've still got the same dialog open, and I can put what I want in at this point. So I didn't actually want to go particularly in depth with the mouth, so it's all on the surface so far. Now there's quite a good sort of curvature, or at least there will be more of a curvature once I've done a little bit of tweaking, but the mouth is starting to kind of angle back, which means from the side view we can see that the mouth has got a kind of length element to it. Now I'm going to move this edge along. In edge mode there is a possibility to slide an edge along, so if I do transform constraint edge slide like that, can I just drag it? No, I think I probably need to do a move. So it's a move along the axis, and then, but it is moving along the edges it's sort of running along. So it's keeping the angle I've already built in there. Okay, so these things kind of just stay set, so you've got to remember to turn them off when you're finished with them. Okay, so that edge wants a scaling, so that's R on the keyboard. Just bring it a bit down like that. That one maybe a little bit more too. That one can stay okay. Just make a little dent in the middle. That's this one. Tweak, tweak, tweak. you can see I'm building in a bit of an angle there as well, so I'm just checking that it's not so much a mesh angle. And so the way around that would be really to grab the vert on the end and just move that to a slightly better shaping. And like that. So you start probably to get a few crinkles in your mesh because you won't be able to stop your, no, I don't mean that, but you won't be able to always kind of predict how your tweaks are going to settle on the surface somehow. So I'm doing a lot of stuff using just one axis in moves, and therefore you can move something closer along a slightly slanted surface and it starts to make a dent in the shape. But anyway, these things are all very, very fixable. Don't worry about them, just kind of live with them, annoying as they appear to be. Okay, so I'm just going to go Q again, so I'm not accidentally choosing something. Drag select those three, and now that's sort of quite a good exterior profile for the shape of the lips. So I'm just going to extrude and inset again. Now you can see if I go too far, look at the corners of the mouth there. See, I've started to self-intersect. So that'll be a bad mesh, that'll be a mess, and it's a lot of work to rectify. So go slightly less far than you want to, and satisfy yourself with, in this particular case, this is going to be a part of the mouth that gets some detail via other kind of cheeky methods. So let's say I really wanted to have another a much kind of closer point where the lips start, but I don't want to have it all crushed up. So I'm modelling this with a slightly open seeming mouth, and I'm modelling the mouth bigger than it's going to be at first. So I'm creating the basic structure, and then I'm going to do some tweaky work to get it to the shape and the size I want it to be. But by this point I will have made the aperture so that the mouth could be opened and it could be animated by somebody. May not be me, but when making a model, a character model, you're going to need to always think, nearly always think, that it's going to want to be facially animated for one extent or another, even if it's just for expression, not for speech. Okay, so I've got some nice kind of running around profiles there. If I go for Multicut and just hold Control down and then just run around the edge there, that's a sort of locking edge to help confirm the difference between lip and face. Okay, so I'll finish Multicut, Q again, drag these three, and I'm going to scale them up slightly. No, I'm just going to scale that one up. And then edge mode, and just scale this edge up as well. So what I'm seeing that is if I do any more in, I'm going to get intersection again. So I'm just trying to fix that before it ends up sort of unfixable. So another extrude in, and not in, inset really, rather than inwards. About like that. Oh, that's much better. Okay, cool. And then I'm going to extrude again, so double another click on the extrude, and this is going to have an internal projection. So there we are, mouth hole kind of done and started. too bad, a little bit shapeless. So I'm preserving some of these areas with quite a large face. It's still quite kind of flat-faced, moon-faced sort of individual, and this is really just so I can get the kind of fine edge cuts, proximal edge cuts done, and still kind of manipulate the mesh quite conveniently. And then I'm going to start scaling things down and moving things in when they're conforming to a lot of the right shapes. Okay, so very kind of exaggerated, or what's the word? Caricaturesque. Okay, so I'm going to go edge mode now, double click, and this is another example why it's great to have quads, because it just allows you to double click whole loops and do what you want with them. Okay, now if we look at the top lip, it's probably needs a bit of rejigging on it. Not too bad, to be fair. Okay, so some of the things I'm doing, I'm kind of getting away and thinking, yeah, I might have been better just tweaking that differently earlier on, but really these are bits as part of the kind of learning curve of a modelling project. When you're modelling something for the multiple time, you'll just kind of rethink bits about the way you do it, or you'll forget the way that worked brilliantly the first time and just find yourself redoing some of the decisions. Okay, so now you might want to have a go at, have a look at the way mouths are kind of conformed if you're doing something really naturalistic, just to avoid that sort of rubber band mouth sort of impression that everything's exactly the same shape and seems to be constructed of a continuous, evenly thick amount of stuff. Now, I can almost hear somebody saying, well, it's not a very good corner of the mouth there, but I'm just preparing the ground for that to get a little bit more detail, so getting there. Okay, so while I'm at it, I can see this poly here, that needs a gentle extrude on, just to give it for some reason that one went live. Okay, whatever, just to give it that bump on the side of the nostril. There's no need to do something for the tip of the nose unless that's a real kind of feature you want to is the word flesh out? I don't know. And then a Q again. We're going to have a nice bump on the chin too, so extrude, inset, and then a tiny amount of thickness if I can just do that, not too much. Okay, right, so I'm going to go at vertex mode, select that single edge in the middle of the eye and hit the Ctrl and Delete. I thought it was going to get rid of the poly too, so the face. So I need to do that, and then just hit delete. Polys go with delete. So that's empty now, which means I can then fit my sphere in it. Okay, before it gets the sphere in and starts to get a I start kind of chasing things with these straight edges that I don't really want to or need to. I'm going to add in a multicut sort of about there, and that's going to be helping to form the brow. So at the top here, that's going to be quite a useful bit of structure. Here, not so much needed unless I was going to do some mega bags underneath the eyes, but it will provide at least some kind of direction for the mesh to contract in if it was ever animated as well. And then a cut or two to help provide some curvature. So if I can do one there, one there. I'm not sure about this one here, because it might be, I might need it for the eye certainly, but it won't be very good to have it going all the way around the back of the head. So I'm going to do that as a straightforward multi-cut without any kind of keyboard help, and then just leave that as it is. So every time I add a multi-cut around here from now on, it's just going to be more loops. So like kind of that, but I want to sort out the shape of the eye first. So the shape of the eye is obviously not completely circular, but I guess if that was a feature of your character, you wanted a kind of completely circular eye aperture, then you'd just select all the edges around here, which would be doable by double clicking and then hitting Circularise. It might not be edit mesh, Circularise. Yeah, so quite often you get these sort of rotation effects, and once you try and you'll see that they're going in the same rotation as well. It's like it's rotated to the right. Now this is supposed to be a mirror of what's going on this side, but it's just it's not a mirror, it's a direct translation almost. That means symmetry has gone up the spout for me, so I don't want Circularise anyway, so there. Okay, so now we're in the territory of just dragging pairs of vertices to try and improve the shape. So shift to select pairs, W, drag across, and then that pair, and to move that one. Okay, and then a few kind of individualized tweaks just to get it to go yet more eye-shaped still. Okay, so I'm creating a kind of manual curve on this. Okay, I'm going to go back to that edge selection and just drag these even further towards the middle. That's a little bit better, I think. And then, oh, there's one edge there that I'm just orbiting now just to see that it's the one on the front of the face that I've selected, not one passing through the head. Okay, and a little bit more of that. Yeah, not bad, not bad, not bad. So there's a little bit of a mesh effect there. If it looks like it's folding over, but it's not quite. It's just at something of a steep angle. Okay, but we've got a fix for that. Okay, so it's sphere time now. Click on a sphere. That's in the middle of the world space, which is just there. So we'll get the eye off that very quickly, thank you. I'm going to turn symmetry off. No, I'm not. I'm going to leave symmetry on. Okay, so I'm going to grab this and place it about where the eye should be. And I can see from this viewport that it's in just about the right position, but it needs bringing forward. So just zoom out a little bit and get the blue one, bring that in, then tweak it. Now it's default size, which isn't big enough. So let's go and visit its inputs. So radius is going to be 3. And that might prove to be slightly too big, but we'll see what happens. And then I've got a translate setting here, rotate, sorry, that I need to do, which is to rotate it around the x-axis. It could be plus 90 or minus 90, it doesn't matter. And this will get the polar area of the globe into where the pupil would be. You might end up with the wrong size rings here, depending on what size sphere you need. So you might need to adjust this number of subdivision axis numbers. So if I go for 16, for instance, it gets a little bit more angular. 16 seems to be about the lowest. And what you can do is, given that you're going to be potentially, what have I done? Overhit 3. 2, that was 2, wasn't it? So if I go 1. There's that smooth or non-smooth. Okay, so anyway, that's just need pushing back in so that you've got one pupil spot and one iris ring as well, and that's a really nice guide for when you're painting it up. So when you've laid out the texture, to be able to see that, it just makes the painting job very easy. So assuming you're going to be painting an eyeball. Okay, now the position of the iris, or the eyeball in the eye, is the upper eyelid covers it slightly more than the lower eyelid does. So kind of slightly more hooded. Okay, now I'm not doing that just for show, because that is the basis upon which my eye, the shape of the eye, should conform. So I want to get this back now to the point where I can see where it first intersects with whatever mesh I've currently got. Okay, so if I go to object mode and then just click my model, so as I'm orbiting I can see bits of the other mesh, just sort of, or the rest of the mesh just by the side, so I can still do with bring that just a little bit forwards, not too far, so where it starts to dent, and then as it gets towards the edge, about there. Okay, so let's go for this one now and fix it up. So I'm in edge mode. I'm going to cue it to make sure I don't move anything I don't want to. Just double click. Now if I move the whole eye, then I'm just going to be in this kind of shuffling backwards and forwards, process, so I don't want to choose the whole eye. So I think if I go to wireframe mode and just orbit round, and I can just about see where those edges that I want to move are. So I'm going to just click on that edge and that edge and just drag them forwards. Now I've got them selected, I don't need to see them anymore, so I can go back to mesh view and go for W, and then I can just drag them forwards and stop when they've cleared the eyeball there. And then the same thing for the underside. Oops. Back to surface view. And then just tweak them back until you can see the eyeball kind of creeping over. And bring it back like that. Okay, so this only works because I've flattened the eyeball to face, oh sorry, the eye aperture to face the Z axis plane. So if you're having trouble getting your eyeball to conform to, obviously the model's eyeball, to conform to the I think I've just by chance I've got the right vertex selected, but if I hadn't, I need to go back to the mesh like that, orbit round to kind of try and work out where I am. So yep, still looks like the right one is. It says I've got two selected, so that's one on the symmetry side as well. And then back to surface view. And just grab these two, which is just the same as really selecting an edge. We'll just get that edge. And there we go. Okay, so go to edge mode, double click this, and I'm going to build a multi-cut around, so I didn't really need to select that, but that just kind of marks out where I'm working. Multi-cut, hold Ctrl down and build one to make a good sort of edge, edge of the eyelid, so like the raised edge. Now I need to double click that loop and then just drag that edge forward a bit like that. It's making a nice shadow already. Right, now I need another ring around, so if I go multi-cut, and this one is going to be a reasonable basis for eyelid edge. Now if you really wanted a kind of a googly eye, then you'd probably want to do two multi-cuts down here just to make a good sort of curvature on the googly eyes, but I don't think that's needed for this particular case. And now I need, before I do any more cuts around here, I'm going to adjust the ones I've got. Now this is a bit, it's a real power tool when you're doing this sort of thing. There's Quaddraw, which well, so create and refine new topology based on the features of a live reference whatever that is. Anyway, so I think it's, you can make a plane of faces kind of conform to the shape of something else but obviously the new plane has perfect topology or something. But anyway, the power version of this is you hold the shift key down and you can see a little tooltip that says, by your cursor, it says relax. And it kind of, I don't know about relaxing, but it is quite fulfilling to do this, because you can start to then see how the mesh becomes sort of more organic looking, and the structure less angular. So I've already got that to look more circular, and what it's doing is just looking at the surface of stuff over the mesh and making each vert sort of become closer to its neighbours, so they're not kind of quite so tightly stuck to where they are. So I don't want to do any relaxed work near this corner of the mouth, because I want that to be fairly tight. And there is a I've got a bit of a hold up here. Which could be a crash. These sort of live relaxation tools, I think they can be a bit iffy in other software as well. It's having to think about something. Yes, Maya that's crashed. You can see show off as a separate app, so it's still works okay. But yeah, I think my Maya's crashed. So what I would do from here on, there's no more kind of loop reorientation to do on the front of the head. There's a few things to tidy up around the side of the head. I've got an area here which is around about from that height going down, which will become, or could become, the ear. Ear is definitely an object that needs a kind of simplification. You've got to just think about it in terms of kind of continuous runs of edge loops and nothing that's really very finely sculpted. Okay, I'm going to pause this and see if I can wait and get back and just do a little bit more. Okay, it didn't crash. So I was just talking about other things I can do. I can do a few of them. I haven't really got time, and I'm sure you haven't got the interest to see much more of this, but it is worthwhile seeing what I might do around the side of the head. So there's a multi-cut that needs doing to go through the side of the mouth. That'll give me a bit more mesh to play with, and then I want to start moving some things around, and then there's no end of stuff I could do, which I won't bore you with, but working around the head and providing some information that could help shape the head. Now if you look down here, that multi-cut terminates. That's because I've got this edge left over from what I did before. So if you find this where you've got this sort of scenario here where you've got an edge that kind of goes to nothing, and I did end it on purpose because I want to make sure it didn't just kind of track around the back of the head pointlessly. So this is how to make sure you're kind of terminating edge loops with quads rather than with non-quads. So this poly here, this face here, is actually six-sided because it's got a vertex splitting two edges. Anyway, so with multi-cut you can't really, well, maybe you can. I'm going to give that a go. I'm going to see if I can drop a vertex here and then go to there. Yeah, well, it'll work great. Sometimes doesn't work. Now I need to snap off with my right click and then do another cut there. So that's one six-sided that's become 3 quads. So that's a good outcome as far as the mesh is concerned. Right, so I might want to add in a bit more edge loopage in around the mouth area, make sort of rings of edge loops if that's not a contradiction, and maybe here as well, especially if there's kind of a big distance here by the nose to sort of fix, and to get a to stop the impression of there being, you know, massive chunky head and forehead. See, that one's rooting around now because I've built quads in. It's kind of tracking on and making its way back to the eye socket, which I'm not sure I need. So if I try that one, yeah, that's probably a better position. Okay, so far too chunky. Actually, there's one there that probably wouldn't be a bad addition. Yeah, far too chunky. So I'm going to do a bit more Quaddraw stuff. I'm going to have a quick save before I do. And get busy with the quad. Okay, because I've got roughly even amounts of stuff either side of what was a corner, it makes it sort of easier to just take a bit of liberty with the setting. I don't want to go too much down this. There's a point along here where I want to just undo that last Quaddraw I did, and there's a point along here where I want to just make sure I've got the shaping right. So push that a bit around there. Yeah, I can see a need for another loop here. So the kind of side of from the front to the side of the head maps around this area here, and that needs a bit more topology, and then further dint round here. So multicut, something like that, and that's a lot better kind of structure to play with. Stop that. And back to Quaddraw, hold shift down and get relaxing. Okay, now although I'm doing some quite effective and quite good work here, what I'm not doing particularly is affecting that impression that it's sort of slab edged. So what it is, it's got the edges as defined by the cube, which have a particular setting for display effects called harden. So if I select all these edges here, I can kind of individually individually, or just kind of group target them and just make them go mesh display, soften edge. And as I've done that, that's instantly better, isn't it? So of course it's gone there on the symmetry. Other areas you can see on the chin there, that still needs softening. Corners of the head as well. You could also do a process that identifies edges by the angle they have to one another. So there's a settings thing here. So if the angle between one side of the edge poly and the other side of the edge poly is more than 40 degrees, it's going to be a hard edge, and then less than 40 degrees it's going to be a soft edge. Not quite sure how that number got generated, but probably through picking up and sliding. So if you go 45 degrees, that's kind of half of a right angle. So it does some working out. So those ones that I just softened carefully have turned up hard again. What you can do with that is use that as a way of saying, well, you just need to do some resculpting, because there's enough topology there. I've got enough to be able to pick up that edge and just drag it inwards diagonally to make it better curved. And that edge wants to go back, but it's more that vertex there that wants to go back. And then move stuff around to better form the edge of the jaw at some later point. Okay, so I'm not going to do an ear. You probably need to have a go at an ear, but the process will be the same, except the ear doesn't generally animate. If you've got a creature that where the ears can sort of move over the skull, like cats, they can turn their ears, and so they kind of really do seem to move. You do want to build in a structure. So imagine this is the base for the ear. Then you'd want some rings of edges around it. But if the ears are going to be fixed, like for a human, then you don't need that many rings around. You just need to say that, for instance, these polys here are going to be the ear. Probably I want to reshape that bit, to be honest, but maybe just those two then. Those two polys there are going to be the ear. Just grow it a bit, move it down a bit, and then do a series of extrudes, taper out, and then taper in, so that you get the kind of stuck on the side effect of an ear. But there's a lot of stuff to think about. There's the folds, there's the lobe, there's the ear hole itself, and then there's a kind of ridge that runs around above the hole, that's almost like a kind of secondary bit of structure. So no, I said I wasn't going to, but here goes. So it comes out a little bit, it offsets outwards, so you kind of can't see its root particularly well. Maybe moves back the selected. Okay, so I've got something else in my selection somewhere. 4 faces selected. Get this occasionally. I don't know if it's a bug or something I've done wrong. Anyway, go for Q, go for M again, move W again to move it. Still no joy. I'm going to bash on, see what else, see if anything bad happens as a result. So I'm going to think this again. 2 divisions. Is that 2 divisions? 2 divisions like that. Hit extrude again. This time, maybe just a thickness. So an inset. And then extrude inwards, and so extrude again, inwards, and then I'm going to, for one last final go, I'm going to add an extrude to create an inset. You can see it going over the top there, and then finally an extrude that's just thickness going in, so that's the whole of the ear. Now I'd do some reshaping of that, add some loops in which would travel over the head, but then it's a bit kind of blank looking over there anyway, so that would be fine. And I could use relax and just space them all out over the side of the head a bit more efficiently, but I think that's enough. I think that's there's a fair few amounts of things there. You've got Quaddraw to soften things up by just averaging the spaces between the vertices out. You've got Soften Harden under Mesh Display to pinpoint, or to do it by angle using this setting here. Okay, I'll leave that at that. So I'm going to go and do a bit more on this, and then come back with some better results next time. Okay, so thank you.